Hello, everyone, and welcome to this presentation of Diverse Ways of Knowing Nature. My name is Emily Thompson, and I'm the community-led librarian at Milton Public Library. We are so thrilled for this artist video showcase as the culminating event for our Speak for the Bees series. When Milton Public Library conducted its series of community conversations in 2019, we heard you loud and clear. Miltonians are passionate about environmental issues. Whether it was students participating in climate strikes at their schools or grandparents worried about the kind of future they were leaving behind for their grandchildren, environmental consciousness was a key priority across all of our conversations. Milton Public Library has been honored to host a series of virtual lectures and events under the Speak for the Bees banner with generous support from the TD Friends of the Environment Foundation. Speak for the Bees is both a play on Dr. Seuss's cautionary tale, The Lorax, who you may remember spoke for the trees, and a nod to our award-winning brand identity. In 2019, MPL launched its bee logo, which symbolizes the library as a hive of activity and teamwork, where the community comes together to be inspired. Throughout Speak for the Bees, we invited participants of all ages to engage with our environmentally themed speakers, to discover, to think critically, and to get informed about how to cope with the current climate emergency. Most importantly, we came together, even in the midst of a pandemic, to be inspired to save our planet and the bees. As we gather for this presentation, I would like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather at Milton Public Library is part of the treaty lands and territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit. As we come together on these treaty lands, we thank the Mississaugas of the Credit and acknowledge that we all have a responsibility to honor and respect the lands, waters, plants, animals, and ancestors who walked here before us. I hope you'll keep this in your mind and in your heart as I turn it over to Jennifer Marshman, the project facilitator for Diverse Ways of Knowing Nature. As part of its Laurier Lecture Series in partnership with Wilfrid Laurier University, Milton Public Library was honored to host Jennifer in 2020 for her talk, The Bee City Movement, Shifting the Doomsday Narrative to Hope. We are thrilled to welcome her back to close Speak for the Bees. Welcome, Jennifer.
Hi, thanks so much, Emily, for that. That was a great introduction. And also for this opportunity to showcase and share the work of the artists that we'll be hearing from this evening. I also just want to thank Carolyn Hawthorne, the Associate Director of Strategic Initiatives at Wilfrid Laurier University. And of course, you just met Emily Thompson, the community-led librarian at the Milton Public Library, for all of their support for this project. I'm very honored to be able to introduce this project that I had the great pleasure of working on with some truly talented and inspiring artists. Emily, as our host this evening, you've done an acknowledgement of the land, but I would also like to say that the artists that you'll meet this evening are physically located in Ontario, mostly in southwestern Ontario, and also a bit further northeast in Ottawa. I am speaking to you from Waterloo Region, which is located on the Haldimand Tract, traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Neutral peoples. So the approach to this evening's presentation was very much inspired by work being done in our decolonization and indigenization community of practice, facilitated by the amazing Erin Hodson, who is Laurier's Indigenous curriculum specialist and an educational developer with the teaching and learning team. This evening's presentation is an opportunity for us to sit back, relax, and journey into the creative process. So in the world of academic research, knowledge dissemination tends to foreground and place higher value on certain kinds of knowledge, specifically peer-reviewed research. This kind of research is one way to tell a story. It's an important and well-established and systematic way of creating new knowledge and sharing that knowledge. But it's important to recognize that it's not the only way. We're seeing a broadening of what is considered a valuable form of storytelling. We're seeing more qualitative expressions, participatory praxis, and practice-based evidence emerging across disciplines. So what that really means is that researchers and communities are embracing a diversity of information sharing strategies and techniques. some of which have very long and rich histories and cultural heritage. And there's been different forms of storytelling that have been taking place for as long as humans have been on Earth. So when I was first invited to participate in an event series called Speak for the Bees, there was no way that I could turn it down. Along with my fascination with pollinators, one of the things that my PhD research has affirmed is the need to address misinformation about bees, including the widely held belief that honeybees are the most important pollinators. In fact, there are more than 20,000 documented species of bees on Earth. That's nearly the same number as all the mammal and bird species combined, with nearly 1,000 species in Canada alone, of which only one is the European honeybee that we most often hear about in the media. These incredibly diverse species of bees are critical for healthy ecosystems. They create the resources for people and other animals, including healthy food systems, especially agroecological food systems where diversity is prioritized. One of the ways into a greater awareness or appreciation of nature and bees is through art and other forms of storytelling. So on the Milton Library website, where this event series is introduced, they say that the series is named Speak for the Bees as a nod to Dr. Seuss's brilliant and cautionary tale, The Lorax, first published in 1971, that we heard Emily just introduce. It's a tale that is both an environmental warning and a critique of capitalist consumption of resources. In it, the Lorax says, "I am the Lorax. I speak for the trees. I speak for the trees have no tongues." Well, bees do have tongues, and even though they aren't speaking to us in so many words, we're receiving a message loud and clear. The message is that bees and other insects are in trouble, primarily due to human activity. Our increasingly urbanized, indoor, and even virtual world threatens to further disconnect us from the living planet, our kin. As such, we have a responsibility to use our power and our voices to advocate for the other living things that are harmed through human actions, and to give a voice to bees and other pollinators that can be expressed in a way that fosters inclusion, reciprocity, and productive allyship. As a social scientist, my research looks at the human or the social aspects of pollinator conservation, meaning that I'm interested in how we interact with pollinators and how these interactions impact things like conservation policy, food security, and the stories that we tell ourselves about pollinators like bees. One of the options for the program this evening was to give you a more standard PowerPoint presentation about my research and to talk to you about the organization that was part of my work called Bee City Canada, which is now a signature program of Pollinator Partnership Canada. And I welcome a conversation or connecting with you about my research anytime, but for this evening, in honor of the diverse forms of storytelling and the diverse and meaningful ways that people share their knowledge, talent, and passion for pollinators and nature, you'll be meeting 6 different artists who will share their knowledge and their work with you and really highlight for us that we can engage with nature in many different and meaningful ways beyond peer-reviewed research. So what you're about to experience is presented in one medium, a video, but one of the things you'll see as you journey through these various stories is the many different forms of expression, from watercolor and other paints to digital media to landscape art to very detailed metalsmithing and more. For each one, there are deeply personal and foundational stories about how and why these creative outlets are informed by nature and help us understand our place in it. So I'm very excited to dive into these stories with you, stories that can help us understand that we all have unique and meaningful ways of connecting and engaging with nature. And in doing so, we can enhance a reparative, reciprocal, and interconnected relationship with the rest of the natural world. So go ahead and get comfortable, and we will dive into the stories together.
The first piece for you today is from Anne Sanderson, a science illustrator born and raised in the city of Toronto, Ontario. After attending the Science Illustration program at the University of California, Santa Cruz, she interned at Scientific American magazine and at the American Museum of Natural History. In 2006, Anne started working as a freelance illustrator, creating images for textbooks, scientific publications, and children's books. Anne explains how some of her work is used and shared for scientific research and conservation outreach materials. The reason this piece is first is because it really allows us to see these beautifully intersecting points of science, art, and nature.
Hi, my name is Ann Sanderson, and I am a science illustrator. I've always been interested in nature, animals, and noticing small hidden insects in the environment around me, usually things that aren't immediately obvious unless you happen to be looking. When I was young, I would draw animals and plants constantly, from life if they would stay still long enough. Art was important to me, but when it came to deciding whether or not to go to art school after high school or pursue studies in science, I ended up choosing science, specifically zoology. I hadn't realized art and science could be combined into one career until later in university. A professor who painted his subjects, in this case parasites, noticed that I was sketching everything I saw under the microscope instead of taking extensive notes. He mentioned that there were science illustration postgraduate classes in several countries, and it might be something to look into. I ended up following his advice and attending the University of California, Santa Cruz for a certificate in science illustration. The coursework included both digital and traditional art and focused on how to best depict a subject in a way that's both visually pleasing and accurate. It was there where I first learned how to work digitally, a medium that I use quite frequently now. When I started as a freelance artist after school, I mostly illustrated for kindergarten to grade 12 textbooks. Now that I have a child in JK, I appreciate the importance of artwork in the learning process even more. To a certain extent, everyone is a visual learner, and augmenting the text of a page with artwork helps you understand and retain the information. As I grew my freelance career, I was contacted by students and scientists to help with the visuals of their papers and outreach materials. The first person to do so worked with native bees. It just so happened that I had always been interested in pollinators. Butterflies are an easy one, being more obvious, but I also really enjoy sitting in a garden or park and watching our native bees at work. We have so many different species in Ontario, and most people only think of non-native honeybees because they tend to get so much press. Some of my favorite work is educational materials for the public, specifically regarding bumblebees. I tend to work in different media depending on the purpose of the piece, and for bumblebees of Southern Ontario, the idea was to show some of our native bees on their preferred flowers for public education. Since the point was to catch the viewer's eye, they didn't need to be especially large or highly detailed, and I use gouache paint for this piece as I find it easier to capture bright colors with that medium. Accuracy is important in my work, but to what degree varies widely. The bumblebee piece needed to have the species identifiable on a quick glance, but when I work with scientists on images to be used for identification, every body segment, wing vein, and mouth part should be correct. This requires a lot of research, and in these cases, I'd say 80% of the time I spend on a piece is taken up by finding photographs of the animal from different angles and reading up on the identifying characteristics of that species. Sometimes a single wing vein can be the difference between species, and I have to be aware of that before even starting the drawing. I'm often asked why photos can't be used instead of artwork, and the short answer is sometimes they can. If you have a photograph that shows the exact characteristics for the ID in the pose that you want, a photo will do. Where illustration comes in handy is when you want to filter out and de-emphasize certain parts of a species while focusing on others. This is why I work closely with the client, who's often an expert in their field, and someone who has seen these animals in reality. They will often send me a list of what needs to be emphasized, and then we have a lot of back and forth before I go to final. For these images, I almost always work digitally, as I find it by far the easiest media to go back and edit. For digital pieces, the actual drawing process is usually the same. After the research portion, I often make a Frankenstein image, as I like to call it, in Photoshop, where I use parts I like from many different photographs. In some cases, I am lucky to have a specimen in my collection that I can refer back to. Much to my partner's dismay, I do have a tendency to find and keep dead insects. I then create a line sketch and send that to the client for approval. The final image I color in Photoshop or Illustrator, and I find using a tablet for this to be the easiest method, as it recreates the feeling of drawing and painting on paper. I also work with scientists to depict life cycles of pollinators, something that often has no photographs to work from. In many cases, it takes place underground. Again, in these cases, I work closely with the client who describes the process to the best of their ability, and this requires a lot of back and forth before the finished product. I really enjoy life cycle work, as it reminds me that there are processes we can't see going on right under our feet in the dead of winter. I think what I really like about this job is learning about the species I'm drawing and their interactions with the environment. When spring comes, I find I look for the subjects I learned about and I drew in the winter, and it's so satisfying to watch them interact with each other and their environments in the ways that I drew. There are hundreds of species of Ontario bee, which means in an ideal world there are at least that many opportunities for me to learn about and illustrate them in their habitats. I find as long as I enjoy the work I'm doing, I can't really consider it work at all. Thanks for listening.
This next video was created by Jennette Reid, a Waterloo region maker with many talents. Jennette refers to herself as a bibliophile, mother, software testing monkey, bunny enthusiast, and an aspiring planeteer. She has a passion for handmade jewelry and began metalsmithing in 2006. Today, Jennette continues practicing, learning, and creating in her home studio as part of the online community Metalsmith Society. This is the first time Jennette has worked in a video format, and in the video, she shares a glimpse into some of the environmental awareness that influenced her formative years. Throughout the video, you'll see several examples of native bumblebee species, as well as the introduced honeybee. If you watch closely, you'll also experience the creation of a new pendant from start to finish.
My name is Jennette, and I'm a graduate from the University of Waterloo with a bachelor's degree in environmental studies. I'm currently working in the tech sector and spend most of my time outside of work as a metalsmith. There are two things that anyone who knows me accepts as fact. First, I always refer to myself as an aspiring planeteer. And second, I'm a maker to my core. Using the term planeteers, likely dating myself, but that's okay. I was also born in the year that the world's first curbside recycling program was launched, right here in Kitchener, actually. Needless to say, the environment was a hot topic in my formative years and was a constant theme throughout time in elementary school. If you weren't lucky enough to be exposed to Captain Planet as a child, let me give you a quick recap. In a world ravaged by polluting villains, Gaia, the spirit of the earth, selects 5 kids from across the planet and gives them the power to come together and summon a hero who fights on the planet's side. I can't really put into words how much I love this show, but I can tell you that its messaging has stuck with me since childhood. And the intro of the show, the kids chant, "We're the Planeteers, you can be one too, 'cause saving our planet is the thing to do." And after introducing Captain Planet himself, he chimes in, "The power is yours." Those are powerful words to a child. To think that me, can make a difference and help save the planet, that's huge. Because of this, I always knew I wanted to study the environment, and even though my interests and focus in university centered around groundwater and groundwater protection, it's no coincidence that I'm fascinated by the role of bees as pollinators, and the role that they play in growth, wildlife habitats, and biodiversity. Each one of these is a crucial element of groundwater management, including, but not limited to, filtering, flood protection, and water storage. Without the aid of bees, the water supply that 80% of the people in our region directly depend on, and which is one of the largest groundwater supply systems in Canada, would be at risk. can't pretend to be an expert on the subject of bees, but I do have a lot of respect and admiration for these little creatures and all they do to support life on this planet. I'm constantly amazed by the structure of honeycombs and broodcombs, and as a geography major, I'm fascinated by their navigational abilities and social behaviors. Because nature is one of my core inspirations, I tend to work on pieces that center around leaves, raw gemstones, and bees. One of the motifs I enjoy working with the most is the hexagon, inspired by the honeycomb patterns. When I'm in my workshop making a piece, there's so much focus that it becomes almost meditative and gives me a lot of time to consider the source of my inspiration. I also use a lot of found, reclaimed, and recycled materials when I'm working with copper and silver, which I think goes a small way towards reducing my impact on the environment. Once I've finished a piece and I get to show it or talk to someone about it, I like to think that, much like Captain Planet's messaging to the me of years gone by, the bee can act as a symbol that when it comes to the environment and our planet and our population, every single member of a community can make a huge impact, and together we all play a role in protecting and improving the planet for future generations to come. I guess what I'm trying to say is the power is ours.
Next, you'll meet Aaron and Sarah. sisters who've been playing in the garden for as long as they can remember. This is also their first time working in a video format, and as you'll see, they recruited some important characters to help. They always joked and dreamed of one day having their own landscaping company, and in 2003, Gaia's Gardens was born. One thing you may note is how they talk about their connection to nature as being something outside of facts and figures. Instead, they talk about being immersed in nature as a way to connect, create, inspire, and be humbled. Now, with Gaia's Garden in its 18th year, Aaron and Sarah feel that they've finally discovered what they want to do when they grow up.
We've always felt a connection to nature, but we never imagined what we would find on this garden path. Our parents married in 1988, officially gifting 2 only girls with the sister we always wanted.
Growing up, we spent a lot of time outdoors. Our love of nature, creating, planning, and scheming together has always been at the heart of our relationship.
Through high school and post-secondary education, we continued to pursue our interest in the environment. These years also provided the opportunity to work in the gardening industry, sometimes together.
As adults, we eventually grew our plans and schemes into Gaia's Gardens. We're now in our 18th season and still excited and dreaming of what's ahead.
We formed our company in 2003 based on these mission and vision statements.
Mission statement. At Gaia's Gardens, our focus is on your piece of nature. We dedicate our hard work, passion, and creativity to finding solutions for our community's gardens.
Vision statement. We at Gaia's Gardens strive to positively connect our community to the natural world around us by creating places of sanctuary and comfort. We believe this connection has the potential to improve the health of the individual, the community, and in turn the entire living earth.
Nature is amazing.
Nature.
Trees.
Nature inspires.
Nature rocks.
Nature.
Honey.
Nature is beautiful.
Nature.
Animals.
Nature is intriguing.
Why questions are always big questions. We've thought a lot about this one over the years.
People need nature. Our connection and relationship with the earth is critical for our survival. We need nature for food, shelter, water, air, all the necessities of life.
And more than just survival, nature helps us to thrive. We need this connection for our mental and emotional health, for joy, for awe, for inspiration and beauty. Nature refills our cup when we get low.
So our belief is that fostering this connection, engaging with nature, will improve the health of people and the planet. And this is a kind of feedback loop we can all benefit from. The better care we take of nature, the more it gives back to us. Our health is mirrored in our planet's health.
So true. And here's the thing. As someone who studied environmental issues through school, I see how these things are so big and overwhelming, and people feel so helpless to affect change. This is why our own backyards and things like bees and other pollinators are such an opportunity. Helping the bees and other pollinators thrive is something anyone can do.
Exactly, and bees are one piece of this very complex system, and a great example of how our life and health are linked to nature. Any person with a yard or even a small patio or balcony has a wonderful opportunity to help the bees so they can keep helping us.
So this is our why. If we can, through our work here, engage and connect more people to the natural world, then we can call this journey a success.
We design with nature in mind. Our designs have always incorporated the customer's ideas and our knowledge of what will thrive and function best in their little piece of nature. Designing and planning with customers is our opportunity to educate them on how they can work with nature for best results, as opposed to fighting her and ending up frustrated. Our goal is always to end up with a plan that benefits both our customer and the earth.
We don't use chemicals. With our environmental background, we've always believed that the overuse of chemical pesticides and fertilizers is detrimental to our health and the health of our ecosystem. We will always aim to find an alternative method to achieve the same or better results than a chemical crush.
We make it a priority to educate the people in our community about the importance of a healthy ecosystem. Through our gardening business, we connect with many groups and individuals in our community, whether it's through meetings with a customer, working with our staff, networking with other businesses, or participating in special interest groups. We always take time to share our knowledge and our passion for nature.
We try to align our personal lives with the values we demonstrate through our work. When our workday is over, we continue to implement environmental practices at home. We do our best to model for our children and others around us the importance of caring for and connecting with the natural world. It's far from perfect, but we are okay with work in progress.
We are constantly in awe and marvel at the incredible beauty to be found all around us. We celebrate beauty for beauty's sake and try to share this mindset with the world. This is not about the facts and figures. This is about inspiring, creating curiosity, being humbled, and being connected.
So often I think humankind sees itself outside of nature, outside of all the interconnectedness. We view ourselves as separate from the ecosystem, removed from the processes occurring all around us, as if we are merely observers. We like to think gardens and gardening are a way to bring people back in, to grow a connection and an understanding that we participate and are linked to the natural world. Our actions in nature have effects, and these actions can lead to beauty and abundance, but we also quickly learn that there are truths that can't be altered and actions that can lead to devastation. When nature thrives, we thrive. When nature suffers, we suffer. We are linked, we are part of the web. Fostering this connection, this awareness of our place in the biosphere, is our overriding goal. It is our hope that by connecting people to the natural world, we will inspire them to take ownership and understand that their actions matter. We hope they will begin to see the importance of a thriving ecosystem.
Thank you for watching our amateur video. We are so happy to be involved in any effort to help improve the natural world. Bees and other gardening insects hold a special place in our hearts. They love flowers even more than we do. Our lives and health are intertwined in a vital way, so let's all get inspired to speak for the bees.
In between videos, we've seen the work and words of Alanah Jewell. Alanah is a mixed French First Nations artist and is Bear Clan from the Oneida Nation of the Thames. She's an illustrator, painter, and muralist and organizes local Indigenous art markets through I Am Kitchener on Instagram. Her passion is promoting Indigenous art and culture in urban areas. Outside of creating, she's also the Parks Engagement Associate for the City of Kitchener, where she works to indigenize urban parks and open spaces. Thank you all for diving in with us this evening. Our final piece today is from Ottawa-based artist Andrea Elena. Part video, part poetry, and part artistic process. In it, we get to experience the artist's process of creating in a kind of flow state. I hope that, along with all these amazing artist contributions, it will inspire you to continue to seek out new, authentic, creative ways of engaging with our more than human community members. Thank you again to all of the artists. Thank you for joining us, and have a wonderful evening.
Traditionally, discourses of conservation have leaned heavily on narratives of victimhood, unwittingly transforming nature into a passive object to be acted upon in behalf of, rather than as an active agent with which we can only, at best, interfere. Positioned as saviors, humans unintentionally reduce the inherent status of nature, failing to piously celebrate the intelligence, tenacity, and resourcefulness not only of animals but also plant life, which has, of course, exposed its intricate and strategic systems of self-preservation majestically and with great poise, as we scurry by it, not taking notice of how profoundly empowered it truly is. To be a bastion for the preservation of nature is not, indeed, to be a mouthpiece speaking authoritatively on its behalf, nor is it to be the evangelical knight. Instead, the path to a more sincere conservation is one in which we can finally admit nature's awe-striking ability and hope only to exist humbly before it. Pandering to people about nature through a script of pity jeopardizes the productivity which might be possible when working to coexist respectfully with nature. Inextricably networked, plants and animals have never been ours to husband. They have instead been gracious hosts to our petulance and capricious existence. Turning to nature, taking a meaningful stare at it, should elicit nothing less than veneration and gratitude to be but a part of it. Celebrate nature, but be in it like a well-mannered houseguest, aware of the ephemeral place that is held within it. Appreciate the tacit wisdom nature holds. Sit with nature and listen to what it whispers before it starts to yell. My name is Andrea Elena, and I'm an Ottawa-based wildlife watercolor artist. My affinity for pollinators began when I was a little girl and I had my very first encounter with a bumblebee. I had been taught to stand still, motionless, to be afraid. As I stood there, frozen, time seemed to slow down. The creature I had been taught to fear was whimsical, delicate, and gentle. From that point forward, bees were not something to fear. Bees were my friends. I paint bees because I want their presence in our life to be normalized. Like almost all of my wildlife portraiture, I like to paint them up close. I want to depict them as individuals, as persons, deserving of rights and respect. For me, pollinators hold a special place of importance. They are the glue, the liaisons of important relationships. They serve as interpersonal stewards between plants and us. I see them much in the same way that I see oxytocin, as connection and as bond between beings. Its value almost immeasurable. To me, pollinators are the embodiment of love. And if that fades, all that matters fades with it.